Picture this. You step out onto your farm first thing in the morning, breath misting in the cold air, half a cup of tea in hand, and there is nothing. Not a sound. No racket, no alarm, no chaos. Just an unsettling, hollow silence where noise should be. For Jeremy Clarkson, that absence told him everything he needed to know before he'd even crossed the yard. Something at Diddley Squat had gone catastrophically wrong overnight. That single, wordless moment, one man standing in a field, listening to nothing, turned out to be one of the most quietly devastating scenes Season 5 of Clarkson's Farm has to offer. And in a series already stacked with genuinely difficult moments, that is no small achievement. For anyone who's been watching since Clarkson's Farm first landed on Prime Video back in June 2021, you'll understand exactly what Diddley Squat means by now. It's a 1,000-acre working farm outside Chadlington in the Oxfordshire Cotswolds, land that Clarkson originally bought in 2008 and stumbled into running himself after the farm's previous tenant retired in 2019. What started as a kind of high-budget television experiment, what happens when you put a man who knows everything about cars and nothing about crops in charge of a working farm, has become one of the most culturally significant pieces of television Britain has produced in years. It's won Best Factual Entertainment at the NTAs. It's made a 27-year-old farmer from Chipping Norton, named Kaleb Cooper, into a household name. It's made people who've never been within 50 miles of a tractor genuinely care about the price of oilseed rape. Whatever it is Clarkson's Farm does, it does it extremely well. Season 5 dropped on 3rd June 2026 on Prime Video, with episodes rolling out across 3 Wednesday drops throughout the month. The first 4 on June 3rd, episodes 5 and 6 on the 10th, and the finale arriving on the 17th. Site index equals 5-1. The season opens with Clarkson dealing with a major health scare, which sees him looking for ways to make Diddley Squat less physically punishing to run. That's putting it mildly. Site index equals 21-1. The former Top Gear star had previously undergone a life-saving heart operation in 2024, in which doctors fitted a stent to open up a blocked artery. But Season 5 reveals it went further than that. Site index equals 21-1. In the new season, Jeremy explained to Kaleb, "You've got 3 arteries that feed your heart to keep it pumping. My heart wasn't getting any blood." He's describing emergency cardiac surgery involving 2 stents, and characteristically, he does it while half laughing at the absurdity of his own situation. Site index equals 23-1. Telling Kaleb about it, he said his arteries looked like something dangling from the roof of a cave in the Peak District. Site classic Clarkson. Except it isn't funny. Not really. This is a 65-year-old man who nearly died, and he's still out in the mud every morning because that's what the farm demands. The health storyline sets the tone for everything that follows. This is a darker, more emotionally honest season than anything the show has produced before. There's less room for the usual bumbling comedy when the man at the center of it all is physically compromised, and when the land beneath him seems to be fighting back on every front simultaneously. Among the new arrivals at Diddley Squat this season, a fresh flock of sheep, easy care breed, chosen specifically to reduce workload, along with geese, snails, pigs, and guinea fowl. It's those last birds that are at the heart of this particular video. If you've never spent time around guinea fowl, allow me to set the scene properly. These are not quiet, cooperative animals. Guinea fowl are native to sub-Saharan Africa, domesticated by Portuguese explorers and introduced to Europe in the 15th century, and they have spent the centuries since refusing to entirely accept that they now live on farms rather than savanna. They are loud in the way that a car alarm is loud. Not just disruptive, but almost offensively intrusive. They operate in tight, jittery groups, scuttling around like small, panicked businessmen who've just remembered an important meeting they've already missed. They don't particularly like being handled, they don't respect fences in any meaningful sense, and they seem to exist in a permanent state of high alert. Their calls, a 2-syllable repetitive shriek, can carry up to half a mile on a quiet morning, and yet farmers love them. Because underneath all that chaos, guinea fowl are genuinely extraordinary working birds. Site index equals 31-1. They're fantastic for pest control, consuming most insects and sometimes even small snakes, with very little effort required from the owner. Site index equals 32-1. They possess an almost supernatural ability to detect predators and unusual activity. Their loud, distinctive calls alert farmers immediately to the presence of hawks, raccoons, coyotes, or any intruders on a property. Site index equals 31-1. Farmers put them to work patrolling for row crop pests, and guineas do all this without damaging crops. For a farm like Diddley Squat, which has wrestled with pests, ticks, and the general biological chaos that 1,000 acres generates, they're the kind of low-maintenance, high-value asset that makes sense on paper and is wonderfully entertaining in practice, which is exactly what makes their story in Season 5 so hard to watch. In an episode from the mid-run of the series, cameras follow Clarkson as he makes his morning rounds and notices, immediately, instinctively, that something is off. The guinea fowl, which under normal circumstances would be announcing their existence to anyone within earshot from before dawn, have gone completely silent. He and his partner Lisa Hogan begin searching the farm together. What they find is the kind of scene that stops experienced farmers cold: feathers, scattered across the ground in that unmistakable, horrible pattern that tells you everything without a word being spoken. Not a few feathers from a scuffle. Feathers everywhere. The flock had been attacked during the night, wiped out. Clarkson uses the word massacre, and you can hear in the way he says it that he's not reaching for drama. It's just the most accurate word available. Something had moved through in the dark and taken every single one. There is a brief, almost cruel flicker of hope. One guinea fowl is spotted roosting up in a tree, alive, intact, seemingly oblivious to the carnage below. Clarkson's reaction is everything you'd expect. That specific, very British combination of relief and black humor that his face does better than almost anyone on television. But it doesn't last. The final bird is later found dead too. Everyone gone. He calls the whole thing beyond belief. He's right. Now here's the thing worth understanding about guinea fowl and predators, because it adds a layer of grim irony to what happened at Diddley Squat. These birds are supposed to be the alarm system. Site index equals 33-1. Guinea fowl are noisy when they spot a predator such as a wild dog, fox, or snake. Their sheer noise is generally sufficient to let the predator know they mean business. Site index equals 32-14. Their constant presence and noise makes areas less attractive to mice and rats. They are, in essence, living security cameras with feathers. Farms keep them partly because of what they eat, and partly because of what they deter. The fact that something managed to get through not one of them, not half of them, but the entire flock in a single night, suggests either a particularly determined predator, almost certainly a fox, given the Cotswolds landscape, or a catastrophic failure of the roosting arrangements. Site index equals 31-1. Guinea fowl that fall prey to owls and foxes, one by one, are a recognized hazard for keepers, and the Cotswolds is prime fox territory. Whatever got into that yard knew what it was doing. This kind of overnight loss is one of the least discussed but most emotionally brutal parts of keeping poultry. Unlike a slow illness or a difficult calving, there's no warning and no preparation. You go to bed with a full flock and wake up to silence and feathers. The financial loss is one thing. The psychological punch of it, the sense of having failed to protect animals in your care, is something entirely different. And this is precisely why the guinea fowl storyline lands so hard in the context of what Season 5 is actually about. The guinea fowl massacre doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's one crisis in a season absolutely saturated with them, and understanding that context is essential to understanding why viewers have responded so strongly to this run of episodes. Let's start with the biggest one: bovine tuberculosis. 7 times 7 times 1. New episodes were expected to include the documentary series' most emotional scenes yet, after Clarkson's Cotswolds farm was struck by an outbreak of bovine tuberculosis. The farm went into lockdown and was unable to buy or sell cows for 2 months. Site bovine TB is caused by a bacterium called Mycobacterium bovis, and it is the single most devastating disease that can hit a British cattle farmer. Under UK law, any animal that tests positive, or that returns 2 inconclusive results, must be culled. Entire herds are locked down. No movement in, no movement out. Site index equals 16-1. Due to a BTB incident in England between October 2021 and September 2022 alone, 22,934 cows were killed. It is, by any measure, a catastrophe. Clarkson announced the outbreak on X in late July 2025, writing simply, Bad news from Diddley Squat. We've gone down with TB. Everyone here is absolutely devastated. He followed up quickly to clarify it was bovine TB, not human. It doesn't affect people, just our poor cows, which is exactly the sort of thing you find yourself having to explain when you're a famous person and the internet is watching. Site index equals 11-1. The animal that tested positive was a cow pregnant with twins. Under UK law, those infected must be culled. And it got worse. Site index equals 11-1. Clarkson said a TB test on Endgame, the beloved Aberdeen Angus bull introduced in Season 4, was inconclusive. Responding to a user on X, he said, "I couldn't bear it if we lost him." Anyone who watched Season 4 knows exactly how much Endgame means to the show, and to Clarkson personally. The prospect of losing him sent genuine shockwaves through the fanbase. Then, 2 months after the initial outbreak announcement, came the hardest update of all. Suit index equals 14-1, Clarkson posted on Instagram, "This was the first calf ever born at Diddley Squat. And this morning she was destroyed, while pregnant with twins, because she has TB. So sad. The first calf ever born on the farm, pregnant, gone. Asterisk index equals 1-1. In heartbreaking scenes in the final episode, the first ever cow bought on Diddley Squat Farm, whilst pregnant with 2 calves, is taken to be slaughtered after suspected TB leads to 2 inconclusive tests. But here's where it twists even further. Sentin, index equals 12-1 Clarkson, is left with his blood boiling after a post-mortem of the cow shows that she did not actually have TB, but the farm was required to stay in lockdown at the time of filming, finishing for at least another month. She was healthy. She was killed anyway, because that's what the rules require, because the testing isn't perfect, and because bovine TB legislation doesn't offer any room for nuance or appeal in the moment. That specific injustice, an animal destroyed unnecessarily while the farm remains under restrictions it perhaps didn't need, is the kind of detail that lodges itself in your gut long after the episode ends. Site index equals 12-1. After 7 months of lockdown, Diddley Squat Farm became officially TB-free in March 2026, as Clarkson revealed in a column for The Sun. Site Endgame made it through. The farm made it through, but the cost, financial, emotional, and in terms of animals lost, was enormous. Site index equals 13-1. Lacha, Oxfordshire, sits within an edge zone for bovine TB, positioned between high and low-risk regions, requiring most herds to undergo testing twice yearly. This isn't a one-time catastrophe Clarkson stumbled into by bad luck. This is the ongoing reality for cattle farmers across the southwest and Midlands of England, year after year. The badger cull debate, SCITE, index equals 17-1, when the government believes badger culling could stop the disease spreading, but a 2022 landmark report found that a badger cull did not contribute to a significant fall in TB levels in cattle. Rages on without resolution, while farmers continue losing animals in the meantime. Running alongside all of this is the harvest disaster. Clarkson had already publicly called 2025 the worst year he'd ever experienced at Diddley Squat, with crops hammered by a combination of waterlogged fields earlier in the year and then drought and heat waves at the critical growing stage. There's no insurance that makes up for a failed harvest when you're also bleeding money on lockdown costs, vet bills, and a new pub that's still finding its feet. That pub, The Farmer's Dog, is its own storyline this season, one that swings between hopeful and stressful in roughly equal measure. Site index equals 22-1. Jeremy hatches a plan for the pub's first festive season, kicking off in style when The Farmer's Dog hosts a gig by one of Ireland's biggest bands. But pub life at this level is relentless, and it's clear from what we see on screen that it's adding stress rather than relieving it, at least for now. And then there's the politics. Index equals 38-1. The new series returns to Diddley Squat Farm amid growing pressure on British agriculture following last year's budget and controversial inheritance tax changes affecting family farms. Site known as 41-1. Episode 2 sees the team travel down to London to join the farmers' protest against Chancellor Rachel Reeves' planned changes to inheritance tax, also known as the family farm tax. Site known as the family farm tax. Site known as the family farm tax. Site known as the family farm tax. From April 2026, inherited agricultural assets worth more than £1 million, which were previously exempt, will be liable to the tax at 20%, half the usual rate. Site index equals 44-1. Clarkson said at the rally it would be the end of farming. Site. The National Farmers Union called the move disastrous. Thousands turned out in Westminster. Index equals 45-1. Clarkson arrived in a Diddley Squat labeled coach alongside Kaleb Cooper and Charlie Ireland. Site. Whether you agree with his politics or not, watching a man who has spent 5 years genuinely learning what farming costs, financially and personally, stand up and shout about it in Westminster has a different weight than it would from a celebrity who just writes a check and calls it farming. Site index equals 3-1. Meanwhile, Jeremy decides some big changes are needed to make the farm run more smoothly, with the crops getting the high-tech treatment, resulting in Kaleb's first ever trip abroad to see how modern precision farming is done. Site index equals 22-1. Autonomous farming eventually arrives at Diddley Squat, which is just as well, because there are problems at the pub and with the pigs. Site Kaleb Cooper, who has spent his entire life in and around Chipping Norton, and whose idea of distant travel previously extended roughly as far as Scotland, experiencing international agriculture for the first time, is exactly the kind of offbeat, warmly funny subplot the show needed this season as a counterweight to everything else. All of which circles back to the guinea fowl. Because the reason that 2 minutes of television, a man, a yard, some feathers, silence, lands as hard as it does is precisely because of everything surrounding it. You're not just watching Clarkson lose a flock of birds. You're watching a man in his mid-60s, post-heart surgery, dealing with a TB lockdown, a failed harvest, a contested pub, a politically hostile government budget, and a farm that demands something from him every single day, also deal with this. One more loss. One more morning where the thing he went to bed responsible for is gone. The critics gave Season 5 mixed reviews in places, some feeling the format is beginning to show its edges after 5 years. But the one thing they uniformly can't deny is that the show's emotional honesty remains completely intact. This is not a scripted drama where an animal death is written in to create a plot beat. These birds were Clarkson's, that farm is his. The devastation on his face isn't performed for camera, it's the unguarded reaction of someone who didn't see it coming and can't quite believe it happened. That, more than anything, is what Clarkson's farm does that almost nothing else on television manages. It takes the abstract, farming is hard, farmers are under pressure, rural Britain is struggling, and makes it completely, viscerally specific. You watch one man lose one flock of birds, and suddenly you understand in your bones what it means to be responsible for living things on land that doesn't care about your feelings, or your finances, or how much the cameras cost. Jeremy Clarkson walked into Diddley Squat in 2019 as a television presenter, with deep pockets and no clue. What Season 5 makes undeniably clear is that somewhere between the TB tests and the harvest failures and the overnight massacres, he stopped being a presenter playing at farming and became an actual farmer. You can see it in how he handles the guinea fowl scene. Not with performed outrage, not with a speech, with quiet, cold, bone-deep fury at something he could not stop and cannot undo. That's the face of someone who knows the land doesn't owe him anything. Season 5 of Clarkson's Farm is streaming now on Prime Video. The final 2 episodes landed on 17th June 2026. If you haven't started it yet, clear your evening. It's the best the show has ever been, and the hardest to watch, and those 2 things are not a coincidence. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe. We cover Clarkson's Farm, celebrity farming news, and the bigger stories behind the headlines. Drop a comment below. What has been the most emotional moment of Season 5 for you? See you in the next one.